to take up a session on challenges in agile writing. So Srikanth Dash is a technical communication leader with about 20 years of experience in product documentation. He has set up and led large documentation teams. Currently, Srikanth works as a senior project manager in Qualcomm. Outside of work, Srikanth loves to travel, watching and playing cricket, and staying abreast with current topics and technologies. So that's about our presenter for today. Over to Srikanth without any delay. Srikanth, over to you.
Hey, Kalpana, thanks much for the warm introduction, and thanks, Puneet, for talking about the TWT activities. So it's very glad to know that you guys are doing many things. Of course, this is my first experience with TWT, but I'm so happy and excited to know the kind of activities that you guys are doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Srikanth, for joining.
It's my pleasure, Puneet. Thanks again.
You can go ahead and share your screen.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my screen. So let me know if you can see the screen now. You see the screen now? Puneet or Kalpana, can one of you please confirm?
Not yet, Srikanth.
Okay. Okay, what about now, Kalpana?
Yes, now we can see. Yes.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session on challenges in agile writing. And this topic is something very close to my heart, in the sense I have extensively worked and always eager to learn something new to improve the processes and efficiencies. And I'm so glad that I was invited to talk on this topic. So we have the slides which talks about the challenge agile writing, and also I'll talk about Kanban later. And for Q&A, we will have enough time toward the end. So please keep your questions ready, and also type in the chat box so that Kalpana or somebody from the TW team can ask these questions toward the end. I can answer. So about me, again, this is something is TWT is prepared and from my profile, and I'm so glad that it's already there. And I've just used the screenshot what they put in on LinkedIn. So as Kalpana mentioned, that I have started my career as a tech writer, and this journey has been so far for 20 years in this. And I have the opportunity to work on diverse domains. So starting from enterprise server to enterprise software, and then the domains that I worked on, cloud and security, banking and financial, to name a few. And also I have led the large-scale technical documentation teams. And you can see, my details to contact my LinkedIn page, and also my email ID, that is srikanthdas@yahoo.com. So these are the topics what I'm going to cover today. So it will, the first one is, on the agile basics. So if
Srikanth, sorry to interrupt. Can you go to the slide? You're still in the first slide.
No, I have moved to the next one, Kalpana. So I moved the next one. So still you see the first slide only?
Yeah, at least I can see the starting slide.
The first slide. Maybe you need to refresh it.
Yeah, still we are seeing the challenges in agile writing.
Right.
Okay. What about now, Kalpana?
No, Srikanth. We can still see the same challenges in agile.
Maybe you will need to stop sharing and then start sharing again.
Okay, so I'm just stopping. Okay, what about now?
No, Srikanth, nothing. Yeah, it's coming up. Okay, now you can move to your slide, yeah. And if you want, you can go to the presenter's mode. We are
Yeah.
seeing the first slide.
Yeah,
Challenges
what
in
about
Agile.
now? Now I'm in the second
Yeah.
slide.
Yes.
I can see. I can
Okay,
see.
okay, good. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, this is actually the introduction slide about me when I was talking. So I think perhaps you might not have seen this slide. And then yeah, so this is the slide where we stop the sharing. So these are the topics actually what I'm going to cover today. The first one is introduction to Agile. But if you're new to Agile, so I think some of us here perhaps are new to Agile, and some of us maybe are experts, and some of are also to know certain. So those of us here who are new, so it would be good to know and learn something about Agile basics. And some of us who are little experienced, it will help us to refresh and to gain some knowledge about Agile. And some of those who are experienced, I think it'll just refresher for them. And then I'll talk about Agile writing challenges. So what kind of challenges normally a tech writer faces in our day-to-day activities, and what are the typical scenarios that we come across. And then I'll talk about some of the best practices which will perhaps address some of the challenges that we come across. And then I'll switch to Kanban, which is again another Agile framework, and talk about its basics and how Kanban works. And the core of Kanban is the Kanban board. So I've created a simple Kanban board just to go over that, and then we'll take the questions toward the end. So if you are new to Agile, so I think many of us must be familiar with the term Agile, which is so popular today. And it's an iterative software development method. So it's quite a shift from the traditional waterfall model of software development, in the sense where things used to happen sequentially in the traditional waterfall software development method. But here, this is quite a unique method where the teams collaborate, and with a single goal to achieve something within a defined time boxed event. And it's interesting in the sense because everyone has the visibility to what each of the team members are doing and what kind of expertise that each of has. So in that regard, it's quite unique and quite interesting and quite collaborative, and it's a bring a lot of transparency in terms of understanding, and also we have a shared knowledge. So it Scrum. So within Agile, Agile is the software development method, and within that we have Scrum, which is the framework that provides the rules and the directions how the software development method can be executed efficiently to achieve the desired objectives of the project. So in terms of a Scrum team's composition, so we have the product owner and the Scrum master and the development team. Product owner is the person actually who defines high-level goals of the product and works with the customers and the high-level product stakeholders to capture the customer and the market requirements and high-level product objectives, and ensures to have the product backlog created. So the product backlog is maintained by the product owner, and the product owner is the one who identifies the backlog items and push them in their order of priority for the team to work on. Then we have the Scrum Master, who is essentially the coach for the Scrum team, comes out with the Scrum practices, coaches the team how to use Scrum effectively, and looks into the impediments that the team comes across in their day-to-day activities. Then we have the development team, which comprises of the developers and the QA, the quality assurance, the testing team, and the tech writing team. And the development team is responsible for working on the work packages that is delivered in each of the sprints. And then there are some Scrum, ceremonies or the events that happens. So one is at the beginning that the product owner works in the product, backlog grooming is done by the product owner. And after the product backlog is in place and the stories are identified. So the sprint planning, during sprint planning, the development team picks the stories that they can work in a sprint. And then we have the daily Scrum. So it's a stand-up meeting of the Scrum team, wherein each of the team members, they answer, 3 questions. So what I achieved today, what are my plans for tomorrow, and are there any impediments? So the Scrum Master asks this question to each of the team members, and then they provide the answers. Then after the end of the sprint, then there is a sprint review meeting to know the progress and what the team achieved in the sprint. And then the sprint retrospective to know that, what are the things that went well and what are the things that there are opportunity to improve. And are there any other, learning or the training opportunities and any other miscellaneous topics that is being discussed in the sprint retrospective. So if you look at a higher level, that if you work on any software product, so we have the software product goals that are defined, and the marketing requirements are defined, and then the product owner does the product backlog grooming to have the high level epics. So it's a very, very high level that what needs to be done at higher level. Then that is further broken down into features at a product level, and then the features are finally broken down into stories, and the stories are broken down into tasks. So the small unit of the work that is being picked or that is being delivered in a Scrum is the stories. So the Scrum artifacts, like I mentioned, the product backlog, which I covered earlier, and then the sprint backlog. So sprint backlog is the collection of the stories that the team picks to work in a sprint, and the product increment. So this is the shippable or the increment product. So the shippable product that is produced and delivered to customers at the end of a sprint. So a sprint is a time boxed event. So it has a specific duration that is agreed at the planning, Scrum planning, that what should be, and it remains the same throughout the Scrum execution. So it is typically as a duration of 2 to 4 weeks. So 2 weeks can be a shorter sprint and duration, and 4 weeks at the largest sprint duration. And at the end of each sprint, whether it is 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever is being delivered, that should be a shippable unit of the product to the customers. And at least, and the working software, the user document. So in our case, when we deliver a piece of software to our customers, we ensure that accompanying individual documents are also delivered at the end of each sprint. However, if you look at what exactly the role of a tech writer in a Scrum or in a sprint, so you will not find any perfect definition on the roles and responsibilities anywhere that is defined specific to technical writing. As I mentioned earlier, that we are a part of the development team, and we ensure that whatever the development team supports, we also ensure that the related documents or the information pieces are produced in that sprint for that particular unit of the software that we produce. Okay, so there are certain things that as tech writers that you need to keep in mind is to self-organize, because Scrum is focused on individuals over interactions, you know and also the ensure that self-organized, because it's very important that we need to achieve every day. So it's therefore important that we plan and schedule our task for each day, that what we want to achieve, because that's something also is discussed at the daily stand-up meeting. And moreover, it is important that we can always stay ahead of what is being planned in a sprint for a writer, and where I stand and what I need to do. So therefore, planning and scheduling your task for each day is very important. And also, in order to be very effective in a Scrum kind of environment, you need to ensure that you understand the product and the audience very well. This is of course important for anyone who is into technical writing, but in Scrum it is much more important, because we'll not find a lot of product artifacts to refer to learn about the product in the audience. So therefore we need to ensure that we engage with the Scrum team effectively, and understand the product and the audience better in order to produce good quality of information, and also understand the kind of documents that we'll work on. So whether for the product, we know that okay, this is the product definition and the details at a very high level, and we know that who are the audience profile, and we know the personas, mainly the users of the product, and catering to their needs, what kind of documents or what are the activities that we expect the product users to perform. So whether installation, administration, or usage, or getting any immediate help. So keeping those in mind, it is very important that you understand your documentation requirements and the type of documents. And as tech writer, we know that is very important to use our departmental style guides or the templates for consistency. Even if you don't have that, you working in an organization where you find there are no existing style guides, the templates. So what you can do is you can talk to your concerned uh, team, that the development team you're a part of, and hey, look, I mean, this is the style guide I'm referring to. So we have already a lot of established style guides available today, which are available for free, that you can download to or refer to. And if not, then you can come with your own style guide by discussing with everyone, and most importantly, that you agree that whatever you do, that it should be agreed by all concerned in your team, and also the other stakeholders in your department or organization. Likewise, also the templates, what kind of template that you need to use. So what it depends on, the first you need to identify the tools that you need to use for authoring, right, and publishing. And then you need to ensure that in order to use those tools effectively and to bring in consistency, what kind of template that you use. So every tool offers some inbuilt templates, and otherwise also you can create your own templates and to build and to to bring in consistency in your documents, and agree on the authoring tools and the review criteria. So authoring tools that I touched upon. So what tools that you need to use, and the review criteria. So review criteria in the sense that what kind of reviews that needs to be in place. So whether it would be your peer review, your edit review, or your tech reviews and the approvals. So that is also something is to be agreed. So during the phase of the doc development, you need to ensure that all the review criteria is agreed, and learn to estimate and provide realistic estimates. So estimate, we have various kind of estimates, but in case of Scrum, there are some specific recommended estimation criteria. So one which is very popular today is story point, and then you have planning poker, then you have Fibonacci, and then there is something called a T size estimation. So you need to understand that if you're a part of the Scrum team, what estimation technique that your team is adopting, and try to learn that and try to align to that, so that you'll have a better and focused estimate, because this is something absolute. The estimation in Scrum is done within absolute terms. So it's important that, so if you have, so I hope some of us or most of us are familiar that how a story is written in the context of Scrum. So it has essentially three parts: a persona that, okay, so as a part of the team member, what do you want to do, and what I want to do. So, I'm it, and also so that I know what is to be done. So there are three parts: persona, want to do, so that. So, so I'm just giving an example. If I'm a tech writer and a part of a Scrum team, if I want to write a story, what I need to start with is, as a tech writer, I want to provide the information or the instructions to my users how to log in on the product login screen, so that I know that the users can log in to the product using the user credentials. So this is a typical user story for a tech writer. So depending on the product or the software that you work on, so you can consider similar stories. So, and looking at your story and looking at the complexity of the story and looking at the complexity of your feature and the kind of learning curve that is involved, so you need to ensure that you need to talk to your team members if needed, how can effectively estimate for the story. But the story point is something which is very popular in the context of Scrum today. And like any other tech writing, the way the shift is happening, so there is more focus on the task and the topic based authoring with the advent of XML based authoring, and the way there are users preference in terms of readability and also in terms of comprehending information. So the task and the topic based authoring is more popular. And in terms of Scrum, it is much more important, because for every sprint, what we do is we are producing some information which is task or the topic focus. So therefore, ensure that you work on and ensure that you whatever information that you produce, it is focused on a task or it is focused on a topic. And since in one of the key philosophies of Scrum is to become agile, and also in terms of more agility in terms of accommodating the changes. So therefore, for a tech writer, it is important that you become very flexible to accommodate the changes, because once we change, once we ship something in a sprint, and after it is used, or after it is it goes to our customers or to users, so there could be some changes, or there could be some changes also because of the changes could be market driven. So we need to ensure that the changes come at any moment, and you need to work on. But having said that, one of the interesting thing about Scrum is, so we cannot change anything during a sprint. So if any change comes, and based on the priorities in the product backlog, then it will be done as a sprint planning. So it should always go to the next sprint. But having said that, if you worked on something in a previous sprint, and you're moving to the next sprint, ensure that the same thing, but there could be some changes. And then communication plays a vital role in Scrum, because we need to call out the issues and challenges clearly. So therefore, then only the team understands what issues and challenges that we're going through, and address it in a timely manner. And also, we know that one of the key skills of any tech writer is on research, and analysis, and also talking, to the key stakeholders, like the developers and the subject matter experts, to learn about the product features and the concept. Because we have, as tech writers, we have dependency, on the SMEs and the development team to learn the technical aspects, that to learn how a product is expected to behave, and how is feature is expected to behave, and how the product or the features are designed, and how the modules are developed, and at the end of the day, how different modules will be integrated, and how it will be used by our users. So many things that we can learn by interacting this development team members, and also the others concerned. So therefore, it's important that you always maintain constant communication with the developers and the SMEs to learn more about the product. And also there are, if you are working in a team, then it's important that you talk to the other tech writers, because you are tuned to work in a certain way, and you know that your task and how you're doing. But there could be, there are other writers in the team, they must have identified or learned some of the tips and the tricks, and which will definitely will improve in terms of its efficiency or bringing in more quality. So therefore it's important that even though if you have a team of writers and each writer works in different scrum teams, but it's important that talk. Even if you're a part of the same scrum team, you need to ensure that you have constant discussion to learn the tips and the tricks and the best practices. And finally, one must adhere to the sprint commitments, because that's the whole philosophy of the sprint. So whatever you commit during sprint planning, the stories or the tasks that you pick, ensure that you deliver on that. So therefore it is important that for every sprint you start every day you start producing some information pieces, so that what you can do is you can meet the end goal what you commit for a sprint. Okay, these are some of the challenges that typically a technical writer comes across, and some of you here must have witnessed some of these challenges. So one challenge that, to my knowledge, I have also experienced this one, is one writer participating in multiple scrums. So if there is a product and there are different modules in the product, and for each of the module, there are so one scrum team, or there are multiple scrum team for a module also. So depending on the complexity and the size of the module. So what happens when one writer contributing to multiple scrums? So it's difficult for that writer, because that writer needs to attend multiple daily stand-up meetings, and then commit for multiple sprints to produce the information pieces, and then the learning curve becomes steep. So everything, but it all depends on, again, how simple are those features to document, or the stories to document, and what the kind of nature of the scrum teams work. So it all depends on that. But however, if one writer is participating multiple, maybe more than two scrum teams, it'd be difficult to manage that person's workload. But it all again depends on the skill and the complexity of the scrum teams. And the other thing, actually, what the writers go through is providing the final and the approved information at the end of each sprint. So Scrum, it prescribes that the Scrum team must provide the shippable software product and the accompanying documents at the end of each sprint. So for us, it's important, because the development, considering let's say if you're a part of a sprint which has got a duration of 3 weeks, and the development team takes 2 weeks to develop the software, and then the QA team, testing team, they take 3 days, 4 days of time to test that and ensure that the feature is tested, and it is approved by the QA team. And then we need to do one final validation. When I say we, I mean the tech writer need to do a final validation that just walk around the software and ensure that your documents are the information what you have is designed the way the software that works. So at times what happens is you don't get enough time to do that. Of course, I mean we need to do a parallel activity at the same time when the development team works. So therefore a constant dialogue with the development team, in that with the developers and the SMEs helps to know where they stand. So as and when there is something workable software ready, you just play around and just document that information. But having said that, there are instances, situations, things won't work the way we would expect, and things are not ideal. So therefore, it is important that you just stay ahead and you stay that you get the workable software as and when it is ready, and start working in creating that information what is needed, and even if there are some screens already, you just get that. But however, I mean, toward the end, when you do the review and rework, it might not be possible in always. But however, yeah, depending on the story and all, there are chances that most of the time you can do that, but there are chances that you may not be able to produce the approved information at the end of a sprint. And also, all of us are into the situation of work from home for the last couple of years. So as a result, if you are a part of the Scrum team, so the kind of flexibility that you had in terms of interacting with the development team and asking them to organize a quick demo for you and have a short discussion. So those opportunities, you don't get now. So everything is remote. So getting availability of the developers when you need to talk to them, and availability of a quick demo, we cannot just walk to the place and ask for a quick demo. It's not possible now. So likewise, the short discussion, so is not possible when you want. So there are different factors which depends to have this kind of quick demos and short discussion. This is of course a challenge, but now things are getting better. Hope, I think we'll get back to the earlier situation what we were into prior to COVID. And also in Scrum we'll not find a lot of artifacts to refer to. Therefore, I think it's more to do with our interactions and going through the product backlog and the stories and what had and happened in the past and talking to people. So that's how we gain knowledge, and also with our own individual research also we can learn many things. And getting technical input, because this is an ongoing challenge for any tech writer, but here it is much more important because the developers are quite busy in terms of their development task, and the SMEs and to provide input tech writers that may not be one of their top priorities, because their priority would be different in terms of producing the software. So therefore we'll have a challenge whenever we need some input, we may not get those input on time. And then managing the review comments and inputs. So suddenly toward the end of the sprint, I mean, we'll not receive any review comments earlier, but to end up toward the end of the sprint, when we are about to ship the software, everything ready, we'll suddenly flooded with a lot of review comments and the input. So that would be a challenge to accommodate everything. And accommodating changes if the feature requirement change frequently. If the changes are frequent in accommodating the changes, so that's again difficult to keep track of. But having said that, we need to be agile, and we need to be flexible, and we need to find our own ways how we can accommodate such changes. And dealing with tools and the technical glitches, because if you are new to a particular tool that is being adopted in your department, or that is being discussed as a part of your Scrum team. So it could be not only the authoring tool, but there could be a version control tool, and there could be other tools. If your team has a dev of framework that you need to learn after how to after where to publish your work product, and after you publish how it will be released. So you need to know the entire authoring to release cycle. So if you are new to those kind of things, then it's important that you learn at the earliest. And the technical glitches, so kind of, because at times you work, and the technical glitches are something very unexpected and unanticipated, and suddenly you get into that. And at least to my experience, I've seen the glitches could be very minor, but since our knowledge on the technical aspects then are limited, and we may not be able to fix that. So one thing that I have learned over the years is, so I just reach out to a colleague, or to somebody I know may have better idea about that. So I just reach out to people for a quick solution. And sometime also it's important that we go through that, you will learn and find out if you have time. So you also try to fix the glitches at your end. In that process, I learn many things, but depending on if you have that time. So if you have time, so it's important that you try to fix the glitch at your end, so that in the process you learn something new, technical aspects. But if not, if you're constant with time, and that's not is something is quite valuable, or is a good use of your time, so reach out to somebody who can help you with the fixing the glitches. And then the other important aspect is planning and managing a time off. So specifically, if you are a lone writer supporting to multiple Scrum teams, and if you have some time offs you want to take, you have to plan it accordingly. So it's very it's very well and careful planning is required if you plan to take some time offs, because if you're supporting to multiple Scrum, because there are a lot of dependency on you by multiple teams. And ensure that documentation specific stories and spikes are captured in the sprint backlog with clear definition of done. So this is not only for your story as a tech writer, but you need to have an eye on what the developers are picking. For example, a developer is picking a story. Okay, I want to develop this piece of software, and I will I'll provide this when it is ready, the features ready, and this will be usable. So, and you need to ensure that there is a task for the developer to provide the input, or if it is very complex technical information, to provide the information. So in the story, ensure that the developer who picks a story where there is some impact to documentation, or the story warrants that there should be accompanied documentation for that. Ensure that the developer gives a task to give a demo of that software, or if the information is very complex and technical nature, to provide that information to you in writing, or if it is pretty straightforward and easy, just some screenshots if they have just you are documenting the procedures, that will be helpful if they can provide, but ensure that they capture that. Likewise, also ensure that the QA team or the testing team, they have also a task or a test case in this testing scenario, that they are also validating what information that you have created, so that the software works the way what you have documented. And if they have any issues, they can provide that as a feedback for the writer to be incorporated. So these are also important things in addition to your story or the task in the sprint. And delivering the final and the approved information at the end of each sprint. So what is important, that you are delivering the final and approved information at the end of each sprint. So you need to ensure that all the approvals are in place, and the testing team or the QA team has validated the content, and it works the way the software is designed. So one thing I have also witnessed, that at times there are sprints. Let's say if it is a 2-week or 3-week sprint, and the team is picking some complex piece of software. So the writers, they don't have enough time to produce that information. Even if they produce, they can produce only the draft information, but the review and the rework may not be completed. So if needed, so what the writers can do is reach an agreement with the Scrum team that, hey, look, I mean, we can do this, but we are not getting enough time. What we can produce is just a draft. So therefore, can the first week of the subsequent sprint, okay, that is a sprint plus one approach, what I mentioned. So that in the subsequent sprint, so in the first week, can we get the review and the rework done if needed? So that's only it's not something in accordance with Scrum, but yeah, it's a deviation. But if it works, because because of the complexity and the technical nature of the software, if needed, we can do that as well. But it's important that is agreed by the Scrum team. And also consider the right tools for tracking, managing change requests and the review comments. So one thing, as I mentioned, that the writer needs to learn the tools and the methods adopted in the Scrum team. So one is that the authoring tools that you work on and the publishing tool that you work on, that we have a solid command on that. But apart from that, there are other tools. For example, I mean, Jira is a popular tool which is used in most of the Scrum teams, and there are a lot of homegrown tools that the teams are using. So those are their homegrown tools developed by their companies. And there are other tools also which are is currently used. So apart from, you need to learn that. And apart from that also, there are other version control tools where the software codes and the documents, are in the document versions are maintained. And, there are many things which are popular today, like, one is SBN and CVS, a lot of opens. These are open source, right? And then there could be Git, which is also again another one. So you need to learn those tools as well to know how the version control, is managed. Okay, I spoke about the version control tools and the methods, and the important thing is, when you are in a meeting, the Scrum meeting, so that's the one forum, or that's the one opportunity, where you can make your issues and concerns heard in that meeting. So it's important that, you bring any impediments, upfront, and call out that clearly what exactly the issue, and how, it is impacting you. So it's very important, because this is the one opportunity that you get every day. So you need to bring it, very clearly. And the other thing also, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. We have 10 more minutes. Quick time check.
Sure, Kalpan. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, and engaging with the developers and the SMEs informally to quick and learn and discuss questions and clarifications. So we have spoken about that, the formal one, but yeah, this is the informal way how, you can engage with the developer, the SMEs. And finally, be a quick, learner. So this is again, another Kanban is another, framework like Scrum in the Agile methodology. And there are specific, context, the scenarios that you can choose where to use Kanban. At least to my knowledge, what I've seen is where you realize that there is a continuous flow of work. For example, I mean, you have a lot of, feature changes, change requests, and, that's one thing. I mean, at least I believe this is a very good framework to use. And this framework designed to help the teams, to release work products early and often. So when you have something, defined as a part of your backlog, so you can prioritize, you can release those early and often. And it uses the visual board. So this is, something very core, to Kanban. There is a visual board. So in the visual board, you can find a physical or the digital or virtual, signboard, where, you can have your all the backlog, items that is a part of your to-do list. And once if you're part of the, since you're part of the Kanban team, what you can do is, based on the priorities what is being determined, then you can, pull how much, you can work and take that to in progress state, and then, you can get it done. And at the core of the Kanban concept, the flow, because it flows all the tasks from, from left to right, like to do, to in progress, and done. And then arrival and departure of the work item, the task is continuous, in this framework. There are no specific roles, as such in Kanban, but over the period, with one of the practices, the teams, they have come up with the product owner, the program owner, who essentially, keeps a tab on the requirements, the product owner, the program owner, and works with mainly and with the stakeholders and the customers to have the requirements very clear and defined and maintain the backlog. And then, the delivery manager, the program manager ensures that execution is smooth in terms of whatever the team, that they pick and work. And there are two meetings that happens. One is the replenish meeting and the Kanban meeting. So the replenish meeting is where the requirements are, refined and, are prioritized. And the Kanban meetings are mostly from an execution point of view, how things are moving. And estimation, there is no as such method or technique that is used, but, the teams can choose, the work items, what they work on, based on their skills and, based on their expertise. And the cycle time is the primary estimation, method for Kanban. So the cycle time is the time it takes that work item from its in progress state to done state. So the Kanban, the way is work is to visualize the workflow. That's how, it works, because when you pick the work items that you need to work on, you keep everything in the to-do list. So that's your, that's the backlog. and then it is visualized the visualization board, how it's moving from, to do to in progress and to done. And I've spoken about the Kanban board, and then there are cards displayed on the board which represent the task. So we talk about the task, one is to be done, like the stories what we discussed earlier in Agile. And in case of the global teams, because of the teams, they are dispersed in different geographical locations. The virtual boards are a crucial feature, and there are many tools which support and which are available in the market today to support this kind of boards. And a basic Kanban board is a discussed a three-step workflow that to do, in progress, and done. So this is actually a simple Kanban board what actually I have done. So once we see the backlog of item, the list of tasks what we have in terms of the task in the team A, if you see Kanban, team A, they have 9 tasks in their backlog, and they have picked 3 to work on, and in progress what they have picked earlier, there are 3, 4, 5, and the 6, and then done. Task 1 and 2 they have done. So the task 6, if you see highlighted that in red, that is because there is a concept called WIP limit, that is work in progress limit. That is how much capacity the team has to deliver something. Is it too less, is too much, or too less? So therefore, I mean, it's just we indicate that okay, this then during the meetings we discuss that okay, this is an issue. Then we plan whether we can move that to again to 2 phase, or take to the backlog depending on its priority. So therefore, in case of the one task 6 which highlighted is too much, so therefore it's difficult to work on. So therefore, I think it will took much. So in that in progress state, so we can take that to do. Then you bring it in progress when we feel like working. Likewise, in the team B, if you say the task 5 and task 6, they're too little because the team has more capacity to absorb more work. So therefore, this is how the tasks are managed in the Kanban board. So these are some of the key differences between Agile and the Agile, Scrum, and Kanban. So why we should use Scrum? Because it provides it supports every business, right? And the team is more agile and flexible, and learn react quickly to the changes. And the Kanban is designed to meet minimal resistance because it's a continuous flow. Therefore, the resistance is minimal. So this is again evolutionary changes to the current process. And the roles, if you Scrum, we have already discussed the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the development team. And Kanban, the roles are the product owner, the product manager, and program manager, delivery manager. And those roles have evolved, but as such, no existing roles in Kanban. So cadence, yeah, these are time-boxed event in case of Scrum, and in Kanban, this is a continuous flow. And the release, methodology at the end of a sprint is approved by the product owner. We develop a shippable product, and in case of Kanban, it is continuous delivery. The key metrics is how it is measured at the velocity. So velocity is that how much story points a team work on an average in a sprint. That's the velocity, how it's calculated. In the cycle time in Kanban is how much time a team takes, to produce or to complete the task from the in progress state to do state. In the change management, yeah, the team strives to make changes to the sprint, and change can happen anytime in Kanban. Yeah, so Kalpana, actually I'm done with all the slides, what I wanted to cover.
Yeah, thanks, Srikanth.
Thank you, Srikanth. That was a wonderful session. Thanks for those wonderful insights on Agile. Before we take up the questions, we have a small quiz. And we have 2 minutes to answer this quiz. Let me post the link. Yeah, I have posted the link in the chat box. All the participants, please answer the quiz. We have 2 minutes. So whoever answers first will be opted for a surprise. Yeah, your time starts now. కొచ్చి బిట్టన్నా.
If link is not opening for anyone, you need to copy and paste it in your browser.
One more minute to go.
எச்சரிக்கை நாளை கனமழை பெய்யும்.
Vidya, can you mute yourself?
Last 30 seconds. Please do click submit. Otherwise, it will not accept after 30 seconds. Okay, time now. We are closing it in 2 seconds. Thank you all. Kalpana, you can go ahead.
Yes, Punita. Anirban, do you want to share the questions?
Yes, yes. So, Srikanth, we have few questions. First question is from Kimi Mahajan. So she's asking that, are you saying that tech writers in the team should follow Kanban in addition to Scrum framework, which developers are anyway following?
No, it's not like that. So it depends the team you are a part of. If they have decided to go with Agile Scrum, then you go with Agile Scrum. But if the team that you are part of, they have decided to go with Kanban, that you need to go with Kanban. But having said that, there could be scenarios that companies might mandate that okay, for all the product development and the software development, we have adopted Agile Scrum. But some of the support tasks, for example, the change request, anything that is come, any change request, and where the uh, volume of flow is quite large, and that we need to work on, and they can decide, in those teams, if you are a part of, then you can go with Kanban. But if you are a part of a team, who is for the development purpose, they're using, Agile Scrum, yeah, you can continue to that. And if you are a team who is also adopts Kanban only to take care of the change requests and the bug fixes, any fixes immediately, then you should support to do that. It all depends actually how your team is designed and what they have agreed to work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you've answered your question, Kimi.
Yes.
And then
Yes,
next
thank you.
question. So the next question is from Kamal Reed. So he's asking how to address the situation wherein acceptance criteria is changed in between the sprint. That may have small impact on development, but large impact on documentation. Will the
Yeah.
task be implemented to the next sprint just for documentation?
Yeah, so this is a very good question. So ideally, as per the Scrum, philosophy, and what we are supposed to do in a sprint is what agreed during sprint planning. So ideally, there should not be any changes that should be done to the agreed scope within a sprint. But having said that, there are instances if that happens. So what we need to do is, in a part of our daily Scrum, we need to clearly call out like, hey, look, I mean, this is the story that we agreed to work on, and this is the task that I'm supposed to work on. But now I realize that some requirements are changing, and I fear that I may not be able to complete this. So then the team, the Scrum Master will moderate and they will discuss, identify the problem, and then the team will reach an agreement whether that can be completed. Whatever is agreed in the sprint can be completed, and any spill off because of requirements can be taken as a story or a task in the subsequent sprint.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thanks, Srikanta. I hope it answered your question, Kamalrit.
Yes, thank you.
So another question from Arpita Saxena. So, so Srikanta, what Arpita is asking that which tools are required in Agile technical writing? So, and can you please name them? For example, for reviewing content, making sure that you have drafted it perfect in terms of software or version control. So probably she want to ask that what are the base tools? Maybe there are multiple tools. What are the base tools are required in Agile technical writing?
Okay, so it could be that if part of your authoring tool, whatever you're working as a part of your team. For example, if you're authoring in Microsoft Word, I mean, which is a very basic tool, I mean, then you are generating the PDF output of that for review purpose. So you can share that PDF, and as part of your tool, whatever they agreed, right? Okay, there is a version control tool on which you need to copy your reviewed copy, the copy that needs to be reviewed. So what you can do is you can copy and share the link to the concern for review purpose, and they can review that and provide their embedded comments in that PDF, and so that you can have a track of the comments and fix it in your source of files. And the same thing could be FrameMaker, and same thing could be XML. So if it is an XML file, you author in XML and produce a PDF output, and again put it in the. So it's all this goes in that way based on the what tools are in place in your organization or your department or your team. Okay, but the more popular ones with respect to Jira enabling Scrum is Jira, where the stories, and when the backlog and the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the stories and the task and the bundles, everything is maintained. Jira is very popular today, but there are also homegrown tools that are used by the companies. And for the authoring and the version control like concern authoring, you can use any of our authoring tools. For version controlling, you have Git, which is very popular. You have SPN and CVS, which are very. These are all are open source but very popular.
Okay, thank you. And there is another interesting question from Ranjit. So Ranjit have been asked to play the role of Scrum Master in the upcoming project increment planning. So is it going to add value in his like technical writing profile? What's your view, Srikanta?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would encourage any such opportunity come from anyone to accept that. Why it's important? Because you are learning something new, and Scrum Master role is something comes closer to a project manager's role. It's not. I mean, say that we should not use the term project manager when it comes to Scrum, but I would say in terms of responsibilities which is being is assigned. So, and also the Scrum Master is more of a coach and the facilitator, okay, in the Scrum, and it's good to learn how it works, and definitely it would provide a growth opportunity for anyone, and it's a good thing to have if you're a tech writer and if you're asked to play the role of a Scrum Master. So yeah, it's encouraged to do that, but again it all depends on your career interest, whether you want to grow and groom and to be in that line, or or if a different career interest, then you can just learn that for some point of time, then again you can come back, but you must experience if it comes to you as an opportunity.
Oh yeah, really thanks, Srikant, for this nice explanation. So and another question from Saurodip Bisha. So can you give one practical use case example for Agile, Scrum, and Kanban?
Okay, so one actually, user story, what I spoke is a tech writer. For example, if I'm a tech writer and I'm a part of a Scrum team, and I am supporting to, let's say I'm the part of some initial initial sprints, and I'm tasked, let's say that the development team or the designing the login screen of the product, right? And as a tech writer, I am picking that as a tech writer, I want to document the information how to log in successfully to the product, and I'll know that this will be done when the user logs in successfully using the user credentials. So that should be my story, and after I do that, then I'll give it to the dev team for review and the QA team to follow the instructions, log into the application. So that's how it can work in Scrum. But when it comes to Kanban, like there is a list of all the to-dos in the backlog, and I'm a tech writer, a part of a Kanban team, and I can pick some of the tasks, let's say where it impacted documentation. For example, I mean, we have a change request from a customer for our XYZ product, that okay, in this I find this information missing and this information misleading, and I'm not to do complete my task. So what I can do is I can pick that and I can move that to the to-do list, and I can talk to the developers that which part is misleading, just explain that to me, and then I'll play around the product and I'll just fix that information, then I'll move that to done. So that's how these two scenarios and explain quickly.
Okay, thanks. So I hope it answer your question, Shodadeep. So
I just want to ask one thing. Yes, I just want to ask one thing, that what will be, in which case will Scrum will be beneficial, and in which case will Kanban will be beneficial? Means.
Okay. Yeah, I got your question, sir. So Scrum, you can consider when you're working as a pure, development project. So for example, if you are developing a software product, okay, or a software application, right, you can use, Agile Scrum. But when you have, some support requirements, for example, change requests, and bug fixes, and the flow is continuous. Where is a continuous flow? There's no end to that. Okay. So, in those cases, you can consider Kanban.
Okay, thank you. It answers my question.
Okay, so we'll go to the next question from Rajendra. So will individual contributor to multiple team impacts on quality of documentation? Yeah, I guess planning is required. Yeah, can you add some more insights?
Yeah, so the question is if an individual contributor is working on multiple teams, right?
Yeah, so is it impacting the quality of the documentation?
Yeah, definitely, because if you are an individual, contributor or one tech writer that I referred to in one of my slides. So if you're an individual contributor working on, multiple Scrum teams, then definitely, if it is more than two, okay, and if the size and complexity are reasonable, is reasonably high, so it's a bit complex, and it's a bit significant in terms of the size. So in those cases, definitely a technical writer will land into challenges. The good way to deal with that is just see that what is the demand, what is the ask from you, and do you have that capacity? Because if you're a writer, if you're contribute to multiple teams, then you need to go through those many stand-up meetings on a daily basis, right? And then again, you need to produce the information what is in committed. So therefore, you need to talk to your manager, to see that if you are not able to manage. But however, if you can manage efficiently, then you have to find what could the best practice so that we can bring in and learn from others.
Okay, thank you. I hope it answered your question, Rajendra. So another, this is a ask from Priyadarshini. So Priyadarshini is telling, like, in the quiz regarding
Anirban, that's related to quiz. That's not a Q&A. Let's skip that.
Okay. Okay, sure.
Srikanth,
so I have one question. Yeah, you go ahead, Kalpana. I will ask it.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Srikanth. So you have talked about story points, right? Can you tell briefly about that? How do we add story points?
Yeah, so it's actually a way of estimating your tasks. So for example, I mean, as I mentioned that in the product backlog, epic is at a very high level, at a vision level, then broken to features level, then it to story level and the task level. So at a task level, what you do is how many story points. So story points to come up and at that level, there are different techniques, estimation techniques that are available. So you can, for example, if you're using planning poker. So planning poker is there is a set of planning poker cards that are assigned to a number, and you need to pick. So which number you have. So based on that, depending on okay, if a team has got five team member and they pick the cards and each card of a value of 5, then you agree on that 5 story point method. And then if it is Fibonacci, so there is a different way of doing that. But however, for simplicity, I mean, as a part of a Scrum team, you do all this at the during your planning, but agree on, for example, a story point. Depending on all these estimation techniques, you agree that a story point has got 6 hours. Okay, I'm just giving an example, and or 7 hours, because 6 hours is where you can actually contribute, and the remaining in 2 hours goes a part of discussions, meetings, and other emails and everything. So you can consider one story point is 6 hours, and in order to complete the task, if you need, let's say, 10 story points, then you are spending 60 hours, 10 multiplied by 6. So, but in order to arrive as a story point, and a story point is equal to should be how many hours? It's a planning decision that taken to sprint planning, and the techniques what I mentioned estimate are already available to use and adopt by the Scrum team.
Okay. Thanks, Srikanth. One more question. So what are the things to note for a tech writer in the product grooming meetings?
Okay, as a part of the, I believe you're saying product backlog grooming, right?
Yes, backlog grooming.
Yeah. So as a part of the product, backlog grooming, a tech writer should know the high level vision of the product, and then its audience or the persona who will be using that product, and then most importantly the business value that it will bring in to our customers or the users. So those are the high level things one tech writer should be aware of at the part of product backlog grooming. And at the same time, if if a writer makes an attempt to go through all the backlog items, it will be beneficial for him or her to know what are the things that you want to achieve in the product. So that is important. So it's important that take that understand the high level vision, high level features, and then the high level market requirements and what the value that the product will bring in. At the same time, just go through the product backlog items to get it himself or herself familiar with all the items, so that it becomes easier for the writer to work on when it comes to at a story level.
Thanks, Srikanth.
Yeah, I have one question, Srikanth. Here, Ashish here. So I just wanted to ask, like, let's say for this kind of niche industry where we have chipsets and integrated with programming language. So when I say Android, so I know that my Android is getting network for me via that chipset or something like that, right? So what do you think? Like how so what all tools should be there in writers, and not tools in the terms of should he also be allowed to test the hardware configuration, because writers somehow these days they test the software configuration of the the program, but should they also test the hardware configuration? And how does this how do they write about because at times hardware configuration might fail, software is working, but software configuration might fail, hardware is the software is might fail but hardware is working. So how do you see that challenges come to this technical writing here?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ashish. So this is actually, something, because, these products in the industries, what you mentioned, there are very, technically complex in industries. So if the writer has, that kind of domain and technical expertise, definitely, you can engage with the design teams and the development teams, design teams on the hardware side and the development teams on the software side. So to learn, that how the product pieces are designed and integrated, and how the embedded softwares are expected to work. And once we have that kind of knowledge and the technical expertise, it'll be easier for you to learn the tools that they're using, and how the information is developed and tested. But it's very important that do you have that kind of domain and the technical expertise. So that is core here.
Thanks, Srikanth. This helps. So one more thing, like, do you face one challenge, like, something at times your hardware is failing, but your software is ready, and do you find that you have to extend your, planning, or you have to do something, you have to extend, you need some more time to complete on things. So how do we tackle that part?
Yeah, of course. I mean, once let's say at the for every sprint, I mean, you are expected to deliver something which should work. I mean, it's the work in the
Yes.
sense which should be worked and usable by the users. But if you know that something
Correct.
is failing, so what you can do is when you complete the sprint, because once you are working in a 3-week sprint, you cannot extend the sprint duration to 4 weeks. So you have to complete that within
Correct.
3 weeks. So you know that
Correct.
what you completed in the 3 weeks, and anything that spills that in this context what failed can be taken into the subsequent sprint, and then it can be fixed in the subsequent sprint, and then again the final shippable product can be sent to the user along with the additional increments what was expected in the subsequent sprint.
Okay, thanks, Srikanth. This helps a lot. Thank you so much for this clarification. This helps. I will
Yeah,
also like to learn more from you offline. Yeah.
sure, you're welcome.
I think that's about the questions, Srikanth. We don't have any more questions coming up. Once again, thanks, Srikanth, on behalf of TWT Hyderabad and the entire tribe. Thank you so much for taking out your time on a weekend and sharing your knowledge with us. Thanks once again.
Yeah,
Puneet,
so thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for everyone's time